reason is that gold is the same, whether in the hands of a fool or of a wise man, and fire is neither inferior nor superior simply because it is made by a fool or a person who is wise. However, there is definitely a difference if one chants the Daimoku but acts against the intent of this sutra.
Thank you. So in this paragraph, Lord Matsuno is saying to Nichiren Daishonin, I really am doing my Gango every day. I recite the Junyose and the Jigage and chant Daimoku without ever failing to do so. So Gango was still an important practice even 700 years ago. And he wonders about the benefits of the Gohonzon. And Nichiren Daishonin makes it very clear there that the benefits are the same, provided you are not acting against the true meaning of the sutra. So you could chant Nam-myoho Renge Kyo every day, but if your heart was filled with bad feelings about somebody, you get no good results from your chanting. After all, what we're trying to do is to achieve harmony, isn't it, in the world. To think disharmoniously is not going to produce valuable results from your Daimoku. So hate is a very strong thing. Even it can get into people's heads when they're chanting Daimoku. And they have to struggle away to get it out of the way. Also, if you are not really sincerely trying to do the three practices which the Buddha said, how can you expect to get the benefits which follow? So Nichiren Daishonin said there are three practices in this Buddhism. Your own individual practice, teaching Buddhism to others, and study. So he didn't just say that for the sake of saying it. You have to do it if you're going to get the benefits of Buddhism. There's no way out. If you chant a lot, but you don't do the second practice of teaching others or helping at discussion meetings, then definitely you'll find your life is getting stagnant and out of balance. And you wonder, why aren't I getting anything? No benefits, nothing. I feel tired when I'm chanting. You feel tired when you're chanting because you're only chanting for yourself. So that in the end your own problem becomes your Gohonzon. But if you're truly practicing Jigyo and Keta for yourself and for others, then you fly. Because this is what the Buddha taught, and this is what you have to do if you want the full benefits of chanting Nam-myoho Renge Kyo. Also study. You should study, because unless you study, it's difficult to teach others. But more important still, unless you study, when something difficult happens in your life, you won't understand why. And you'll get frightened or fearful or worried. But through study, you understand why. And then, when you hit an obstacle, instead of getting panicky, you just go through it. So these three practices are really vital. Nichiren Daishonin says, however, there is definitely a difference if one chants the Daimoku but acts against the intent of this sutra. You have to tell Buddhism to others. This is what makes Buddhism live, what enables people to understand the law of life. If you don't talk to others, how can anyone continue to understand this law in generations to come? So it's natural that telling others about Buddhism is the most vital part of the practice and leads to great benefits. Okay? Thank you.
This sutra has many stages of practice. Explaining this generally, Nyalo states in the 5th volume of his Hokkien Mungu Ki, in making clear the types of evil, this writing states only, expound among the wise but not among the foolish. Another scholar defines the types of evil as follows. I will first list the causes of evil and then their effects. There are 14 causes of evil: arrogance, negligence, egoistic judgment, shallow, self-contented understanding, avarice, not trying to understand, disbelief, causing persecutions, mistaken doubt, slander, disrespect of the righteous, hatred toward the righteous, jealousy of the righteous, and bearing grudges against the righteous. These 14 types of slander apply equally to priests and laymen. You should shrink from them in terror. In the past, Bodhisattva Phukgo taught that all people have the Buddha nature within themselves, and that by embracing the Lotus Sutra, all can attain Buddhahood. Stating that to despise any of them is to despise the Buddha himself, he carried out the practice of worship. He felt that even those who did not believe in the Lotus Sutra might come to believe in it, and thus worship them for their inherent Buddhahood. Therefore, this should be felt all the more toward the priests or laymen who actually embrace it. The 4th volume of the Lotus Sutra states in part, the sin accruing from even a word of slander against the priests or laymen who believe in and expound the Lotus Sutra is graver than that of directly slandering the Buddha himself for an entire aeon. The Lotus Sutra also states, whether it be true or false, in the light of these teachings, the believers of the Lotus Sutra must absolutely never abuse each other. The reason for this is that all those who take faith in the Lotus Sutra are most certainly Buddhas, and one who slanders a Buddha is committing a sin. The benefits of one who chants the Daimoku while taking this to heart will be equal to those of Sakyamuni Buddha. In his Konpeiron, Nyalo writes, both the entities and the environment of the world of hell exist entirely within the life of the Buddha. Also, the entity and environment of the Buddha do not extend beyond the lives of common mortals. You should be able to guess the meaning of the 14 sinful acts from the preceding quotations.
Thank you. You should be able to guess the meaning of the 14 sinful acts from the preceding quotations. In the last 2 paragraphs that Max has just read, Nichiren Daishonin is reminding Lord Matsuno about the theory of the 10 worlds and the 10 worlds within the 10 worlds. So, as you know, we understand clearly through our study that we have 10 worlds from hell to Buddha, and that within each one of those worlds, those 10 worlds appear again. So everybody has the world of Buddha in them. And likewise, even a Buddha who is in the world of Buddha most of his time has the other worlds also there. So he's pointing out to Lord Matsuno, why should there be any difference between the daimoku of the Buddha and the daimoku of you as an ordinary person? Because the Buddha too is an ordinary person. And you have the Buddha world in you just the same as the Buddha has. So provided you follow the practice that the Buddha teaches, then for sure you will get the maximum benefits from daimoku just the same as the Buddha himself. So the key to it is harmony, isn't it? So far as this particular paragraph is concerned. Just before he'd said that if you don't chant daimoku, or rather if you chant daimoku, but do not follow the teachings of the Lotus Sutra in your heart, then your daimoku is valueless. So what is the Lotus Sutra teaching? It's teaching about the harmony of life, the law which harmonizes everything. And through chanting, we can put ourselves in harmony with the law. So if we can't live in harmony ourselves, we can't see really clearly in front of our noses, can we? Because we're immediately breaking the law. So unity is something which is stressed so often in Nichiren Shoshu Sokugata. Because unless people are in unity, they will be going against the law, making a bad cause, and making themselves and others miserable. Worse still, they will completely slow up people's progress towards happiness in their own lives. And they will slow up the whole movement for Kosen Rufu. If in a like someone, this uses up precious energy and time. Because instead of their minds thinking about something creative, their minds are going round in a circle of dislike, jealousy, or whatever it may be, wasting their lives, wasting valuable time, using up life force purposelessly. In another Gosho, as many of you know, Nichiren Daishonin says that nothing can destroy the movement of Kosen Rufu from the outside, only from the inside. And he says it's like a lion. No beast can destroy the lion, but a tiny worm in its stomach can kill it. This is why he emphasizes here so strongly about harmony. Without harmony, you put a brake on the movement towards people becoming happy and achieving world peace. It's the very thing that Buddhism is trying to overcome, isn't it? So he then gives all the details. It's really a horrible list, isn't it? 1 to 14 of them. Now 1 to 10, you have a look at them and see how many you commit. Arrogance, negligence, egoistic judgment, shallow, self-contented understanding, avarice, not trying to understand, disbelief. Oh, number 8, please change that. It's been wrongly translated. It should be criticizing Buddhism. Criticizing Buddhism, not causing persecutions. Criticizing Buddhism. 9, mistaken doubt, slander, even slander, all those first 10 will be overcome quite naturally through your own efforts to do your own human revolution. By chanting Nam-myoho Renge Kyo, doing Gango regularly, doing activities, you will overcome the first 10. This is what the human revolution is, in a way, overcoming those first 10. But the last 4 are the most serious of all. The righteous means people who are practicing Buddhism, people who have the Gohonzon, or people who are sincerely chanting without the Gohonzon. That is what is meant by the righteous. So to put it in other words, disrespect for other members, despising in other words, hatred towards other members, jealousy of other members, and bearing grudges against other members. So if you are chanting lots of Daimoku and doing lots of activities, but you are bearing any of these things in your heart, these last 4, you're just wasting your time in a way. No benefits whatsoever will come from what you're doing. The cause that you're making is so bad, isn't it? Because it's in direct opposition to the harmony of life, which is what this law is all about. So this isn't some sort of catch or trick to make people friendly to each other. If you think about it, it's the terrible cause you're making which has a terrible effect on your life. So you have to struggle with yourself. Of course, we're human beings. Sometimes our wretched, shallow, selfish, egoistic nature rises up and we think to ourselves, I don't like that person. But worse still, you can really find yourself strongly disliking somebody. And when that happens, which is called onshitsu in Japanese, as you know, it becomes like a cancer inside you. Sometimes so strong it's like a sickness. It is a sickness. And you have to root it out. And if you can't see it and you can't root it out, then it is the responsibility of friends in your district and chapter or group to root it out for you. Because this is what is destroying the world at this moment. So onshitsu physically and mentally hurts and damages life. You have, we've talked about it many times, a thread of life. If you chant Nam-myoho Renge Kyo, you can help somebody far away who's sick through this thread of life that exists between you. But if you send down that thread of life, hate or despising thoughts, despicable, despising thoughts, this actually hurts the other life. Whereas Daimoku revives it. So when you hate somebody, that is actually physically and in every other way, spiritually and everything, hurting that life. The worst case you can have, of course, is, for instance, practiced by witch doctors, even today in Africa. So they can destroy someone. They can actually make somebody die, or they can make them really sick through the thoughts they are sending down the thread of life between them and that person. Of course, that's an extreme case, but with us, even our strong, hurtful thoughts have the same effect. So I've heard sensei say, you shouldn't bring a child to a meeting if the child makes a lot of noise, because then people will be immediately start thinking damaging things about that child. Oh, that wretched baby, I wish they'd take him out and stuff. Even that leaves a spot on that baby's life. So you have to overcome onshitsu. For the sake of your happiness, for the sake of the happiness of other people, and for the sake of Kosen Rufu. In yourself, if you will think of the good points in the person that you are disliking or despising, this will help you to overcome onshitsu. Every time your mind goes to something damaging, you think of the good points. Always instantly switch your mind to the good points. But if it's too deep for that, other people must help you. Someone's got to act as a barrier. Point out what you're doing and mend whatever is the cause between the two people. But the point about this too is that if you know onshitsu is going on in your group or your district, don't do nothing about it. If you feel it's too deep or too complicated for you to speak to the person yourself in order to try to root it out of their lives, then you must please report it to the district leader or another senior leader so that they can take action to put it right. This is true mercy. If you fail to do it, you are failing to help that person become happy. So Nichiren Daishonin stresses this so strongly, and I'm stressing it strongly, because you can see how terribly important it is that people understand this. Without understanding this, unity can be completely destroyed, and people can become so unhappy and waste so much life force in this sort of negative and destructive activity. So Bodhisattva Fukyo always bowed to every human being that he met. He bowed because he recognized the Buddha nature in their lives. And everyone thought he was mad, and they threw stones at him and beat him with sticks. But in fact he was wise, because he trained himself never to categorize anybody, never to despise, always remembering that everyone he met had the Buddha nature in them. This is what we should do. I know some people who, if some slightly bad thought comes into their mind, they immediately say Nam-myoho Renge Kyo. That's like Bodhisattva Fukyo. And it's good. So the benefits of one who chants the Daimoku while taking this teaching that we've been discussing now to heart will be equal to those of Shakyamuni Buddha himself. Okay.
How could your questions on the teachings not be those of one who has earnest hopes for his next life? Since the sutra states that very few people are able to hear and receive this law, it appears that unless the Buddha's envoy appears in this world, it will be extremely difficult to teach exactly according to the Buddha's intention. Moreover, It is certainly very rare for one to ask about the intent of this sutra in order to clear up his doubts and take faith in it. No matter how humble a person may be, if his wisdom is the least bit greater than yours, you should ask him about the intent of the sutra. However, since the people in this evil age are arrogant, prejudiced, and so fiercely attached to fame and wealth, can it be possible for them to become this priest's disciples? Instead, they think that they will be despised by others if they try to learn something from him. Never being able to rid themselves of such evil minds, they are sure to fall into hell. The Hoshi chapter states, suppose there is a person who offers the Buddha an uncountable amount of treasure for 8 billion aeons on end. You should feel joy in the fact that by contributing to the priest who teaches the Lotus Sutra, and later hearing him teach of this sutra for even a while, you will be able to obtain still greater blessings. Even the ignorant can obtain blessings by serving the person who expounds this sutra. Even though it may be merely a demon or an animal, if it should expound only one verse or phrase of the Lotus Sutra, just as stated in the sutra, most certainly one should rise and greet him from afar and respect him in the same way as he does the Buddha. According to this, you must have mutual respect toward each other as you would the Buddha. Take your example from the behavior of Sakyamuni Buddha and Taho Buddha in the Hoto chapter of the Lotus Sutra. This priest, Sanmibo, may be a man of low social position, but since he can explain even a little about the Lotus Sutra, you should respect him as you would the Buddha and ask him to explain the teachings of the Lotus Sutra to you. To do so is to remember the teaching, depend on the law and not on the person.
Thank you. This is really important. This letter, it seems, was carried by a priest called Sanmibo. And Sanmibo was quite a young man. So Nichiren Daishonin uses this example to explain to Lord Matsuno, who was quite an old man, how you should have a seeking mind, always desiring to learn more about Buddhism. And even if a person may seem quite humble and not particularly famous, or in Nichiren Shoshu Sakugakai, not a particularly senior leader or something, but has wisdom and knows, you should listen. It's only arrogance that would cause people, for example, not to listen with their whole hearts to the experiences of members at discussion meetings. Because even the newest member giving an experience can teach the oldest member something. Not to listen to what others say is arrogance, and means that you have a closed mind and that you can never really deepen your understanding of Buddhism. So the seeking mind is what Nichiren Daishonin is talking about here. Even when you're old, even up to the moment of your death, you should be seeking to find out more and more and more about life, about Buddhism. He gives the example of the flow of Buddhism itself. I won't go into it because there isn't time, but in a part of the Lotus Sutra, it explains how. Shakyamuni describes the scene when the teachings are handed over from Taho Buddha, who was, as it were, representing the Buddhas of the past, and Shakyamuni Buddha, who was to teach the Lotus Sutra. And Taho Buddha moves aside courteously and makes way for Shakyamuni to sit down. And later, both move aside and make way for Nichiren Daishonin, or as he's known in that story, Bodhisattva Jogyo, he's known as, to sit down. So the flow of Buddhism is this. The teachings of one Buddha are right for the time that they're taught. Then another Buddha takes those teachings a stage further. And the previous teachings should gently step aside. And the same in Nichiren Daishonin's teachings. Shakyamuni's teachings should have gently stepped aside. So this is the flow of Buddhism, and this is the way it should be. And this is the way we should always listen so carefully to what anybody's saying at a meeting. And also, earlier it says, no matter how humble a person may be, if his wisdom is the least bit greater than yours, you should ask him about the intent of the sutra. This also applies, I think, to guidance. Guidance is really valuable. If you have a problem and you seem to be at a stalemate in your practice, it's good to go to somebody, to your district leader or chapter leader, general chapter leader, or me, or whoever you like, who you feel may have had a bit more experience than you. And they'll help you. Usually, in fact, what they do is to confirm what you already deeply feel yourself. But you fear that what you feel may not be right. Guidance gives you confidence in what you actually feel. So you chant Nam-myoho Renge Kyo to draw up wisdom, right? So of course, when something appears difficult in your life, through chanting Nam-myoho Renge Kyo, you draw up that wisdom, and you probably know deep inside you how to deal with it. But you're just a little bit unsure, just a little bit lack confidence. So it's good to go and talk to somebody else. And what you feel probably deep in your life will be confirmed. So guidance is valuable. Of course, it's also great to be able to get along on your own. But if in the process you really feel desperate and miserable, why not go and talk to somebody else? That's one of the reasons that this society exists, for that purpose. But now the rest, we're already a little over time, and really the rest of this Gosho is that fantastic story about Sesen Doji and the demon. And I'd really be grateful if on your way home in the bus or the train or sometime you read that story through again, because it really summarizes a lot of the points which we've been talking about and which Nichiren Daishonin wrote about earlier in the Gosho. If you read that story again now, you'll see that. So even a vile demon could teach the remainder of that verse. That's one, isn't it? And before Sesen Doji went up onto that branch to throw himself down and kill himself, what did he do? He dashed around everywhere and wrote the verse on rocks and boulders and trees. He wanted to teach Buddhism to the very last, the Shakabuku to the end. And like so often in situations when we're practicing Buddhism, he actually had to get up that tree and go out on the branch and throw himself down before everything changed and he discovered that it wasn't a demon, but it was a legendary God. And isn't it the same in our lives? Sometimes we chant because we've got a problem, we go on and we think nothing is moving. We feel like giving up. But that's always the time to go on. Please remember Sesen Doji. having to climb that tree, get out on the end of the branch, and actually throw himself before the solution came and the bad dream was over. This is life-changing karma. Please remember Sesendoji. Please chant to the very last minute, and always it'll change. This is the greatness of Buddhism, because out of that practice of struggling to chant to the very last minute, you create so many great causes that bring so many great benefits. This is truly the practice of Buddhism. So Sesendoji's story has many good things in it. And finally, at the beginning of the story, Nichiren Daishonin talks in quite gloomy words about death. And of course he's talking then about death as it seems to the average person. Imagine that journey in utter darkness. There shines neither the light of the sun, the moon, nor the stars. One hopes for at least a tiny lamp, yet there is none. Terrible picture, isn't it? But then you turn over to the last paragraph. On the last page of all, with this in mind, chant Nam-myoho Renge Kyo. Continue your practice unfalteringly to the final moment of your life. And when that time comes, behold, dash to the summit of the mountain of supreme enlightenment. And there you shall certainly see that the entire universe is the eternally enlightened Buddha's land, and the ground made of pure emerald. So he is referring there to the understanding of death when you are Buddhist. Firstly, the eagle peak, which he mentions just before that. This is no heaven in some remote place. When we all assembled at summer course, Sensei sent us a message, didn't he? Saying that he could imagine us all assembling on Eagle Peak. Eagle Peak is the Buddha's land. Treps is Eagle Peak. Taisekiji is Eagle Peak when all the members gather there. Your Butsudan and Gohonzon in your home is Eagle Peak when your family gathers round it. You create the Buddha's land wherever you may be, practicing faithfully this Buddhism. And when anyone comes into your house, they feel something fresh and warm about it, because it's the Buddha's land. A stranger coming to Tretz would feel it. Certainly a stranger going to Taisekiji would feel it. So Kosen Rufu is nothing other than spreading the Buddha's land all over the world. And then when you die, quickly you go through death and find the eagle's peak in your new life. So somewhere in the dialogue on life, Sensei says that the stronger you practice to the last minute of your life, the faster you'll travel through death and form your new life. It's obvious, isn't it? If you chant Daimoku and you can get everything you want in this life, if you chant Daimoku to get through death quickly and carry on with your activities in your new life, you'll get it. So that impetus is what pushes you through death and brings you out into a new life. So he says, dash to the summit of the mountain of supreme enlightenment. So it's beautiful, poetic language. But I think that some of us, when we've suddenly seen our lives completely change and karma disappearing in all directions from it. It's really as if we're hearing wondrous music ringing and flowers raining down on our heads, isn't it? Such a light and glorious and fantastic feeling. And Nichiren Daishonin expresses it there in his own poetic words. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you very much. No time for questions, I think.